The room was cold, not in temperature but in feeling. The stage shimmered with polished lights, the seal of the United States beaming proudly behind 5 plush white chairs. The audience buzzed in polite murmurs as the moderator, a veteran journalist, welcomed the panelists. 3 senators, 1 congresswoman, and then her. Melania Trump, stepping into public light for the first time in months. She wore a soft gray suit, her face unreadable. Some applauded, some didn't. But when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett walked onto that stage, something changed. A quiet strength followed her, like the calm before a quake. The event was meant to explore truth in politics, but truth wasn't ready to come gently. Melania spoke first, defending her husband's record. "There are too many lies," she said softly. "My husband tells the truth. But the media, people like her," she gestured toward Crockett, "they twist everything." Crockett sat still, her eyes never leaving Melania. Then Melania added, "Respecting the truth means respecting those who carry it." The air went still. Crockett slowly stood, voice steady. "You're the reason he hides the truth, because you've lived behind one." A hush fell. 1 second of silence. 2. 3. Then gasps, and everything changed. Melania blinked, just once. Her lips parted like she might reply, but no sound came. The moderator shifted in his seat, visibly uneasy. Then Jasmine Crockett raised her hand. Slowly, deliberately. Between her fingers was a manila folder, thin, worn at the edges. Tense eyes in the crowd zoomed in. Cameras followed. "This," Crockett said, holding the folder high, "is your immigration file. Every redacted, revised, and misrepresented part of it, publicly documented, legally obtained." She stepped forward, not with aggression, but gravity. "There are people in this country," she continued, voice quiet but echoing clear through every speaker, "who've been deported for paperwork errors, separated from children, locked away for months." Crockett opened the folder. The moderator whispered something to a producer off stage. Melania didn't move. "These pages show us how powerful people shape stories," Crockett said. "Not for safety, not for policy, but for image." She turned a page. "Your story was rewritten, lines erased, gaps filled with fiction. And while families suffer at our border, your truth became convenient." A woman in the 3rd row wiped her eyes. A man near the back stood up and left, visibly shaken. Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. For a long time, no one spoke. Even the moderators seemed paralyzed. The studio's silence was broken only by sniffles, small, sudden sobs from the crowd. Jasmine Crockett looked down at the folder, then back at the audience. "This isn't about Melania Trump," she said, her voice cracking gently. "It's about every name that never made it to a file. Every child who couldn't explain their truth because no one gave them a microphone." She reached into the folder again. "This page," she said, holding it up, "has your real application history, Melania, including the undocumented help your team erased from public record, including the fast-tracked approvals denied to others. You didn't break the law." Crockett paused, "But someone bent it for you." Melania's gaze dropped to her hands. Crockett inhaled, shaky but grounded. "I met a mother last month who was deported with a 2-year-old left behind. Her son now cries in a stranger's home." She looked back at Melania. "Tell me, First Lady, was your silence ever louder than his screams?" A sob burst from the front row, then another. This wasn't politics anymore. It was pain. And pain was finally speaking. Jasmine Crockett set the folder down gently on the table. Then, almost like it had been waiting for this exact moment, she pulled out a single sheet of paper from her jacket. The edges were frayed. The handwriting was shaky. "This," she said softly, is a letter written by a girl named Daniela Cruz. She was 13 when ICE took her mother during a workplace raid in Texas. Crockett unfolded the letter, her hands trembling. She never got to send this. Her foster mother found it in her backpack weeks later, after Daniela had tried to take her own life. Gasps echoed. The room froze again. Crockett didn't cry, but her voice broke. She wrote, "Dear Mrs. Trump, I saw you on TV. You wear nice clothes. I wonder if you ever lost someone. I wonder if you sleep okay knowing you can stay and we have to go." The camera cut to Melania. Her eyes were glassy, but her face remained still. "Daniela survived," Crockett whispered. "But her scars did too." No one clapped. No one dared. Because in that moment it felt like Daniela's voice had finally reached the ears of a nation, and it cracked something open. The moderator cleared his throat, trying to regain control, but control had already left the room. Melania slowly leaned toward her mic. "I have compassion," she said haltingly. "But these stories," she hesitated, "they are used to attack my family." Jasmine turned to her, not with anger, but with something deeper, sadness. "I'm not attacking your family," Crockett said, "but I will not let power dress itself in pity." She picked up a photo from the folder. It showed Melania at a campaign event in 2016, holding a sign that read, "Legal immigrants welcome." Crockett held up another image, a crying toddler in foil blankets, lying on a hard detention floor. "This," she said, "is what legal looks like when it comes with no privilege." She walked slowly toward the center of the stage. Truth doesn't attack. It reflects. And sometimes when we finally look at it, really look, it hurts. She paused. But it's the only way we heal. The audience was still, many with red eyes. In that silence, people weren't choosing sides anymore. They were choosing truth, and Jasmine Crockett was becoming its voice. A soft alarm buzzed in the control room, too much dead air. But no one dared interrupt. A little boy in the crowd stood on his chair. His father didn't stop him. "Why did they take her mommy?" the boy asked aloud. The room turned. Crockett stepped off the stage and knelt beside him. "They said she didn't belong," she answered gently. "But she's just like my mom," the boy replied, his voice shaking. Crockett didn't speak. She just touched his hand. Melania's eyes flickered toward them. For the first time, she looked human, tired, exposed. "I didn't choose to be special," she said faintly. "They made me special." Jasmine stood slowly, locking eyes with her. "And millions paid the price for your silence," she said. A producer whispered in the moderator's ear, "You have to end this. It's too raw." The moderator shook his head. "No, this is the truth they came for." The lights dimmed slightly, and for the first time in her public life, Melania Trump had no defense. Because the story had shifted. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about every mother who couldn't fight back, and the woman who finally stood for them. The camera zoomed in as Jasmine Crockett approached the screen behind the stage. She tapped it twice. The moderator, sensing her cue, nodded to the control booth. The screen flickered and then glowed bright white. A single name appeared in black letters, Jessica Flores. Then another, Luis Garcia. And another, Fatima Alvarez. Names began to flood the screen, slowly, one by one. "These," Crockett said, "are just a few of the immigrants who died in detention facilities while seeking legal asylum. Most were never charged with a crime. Many were children." Melania stared at the screen, unable to look away. "They had no speeches, no designer gowns, no private lawyers," Crockett continued. "They just had names, and now even those are all we have left." From the audience, quiet sobs echoed. A woman whispered, That was my cousin. Crockett stood still as the names kept appearing, one every 2 seconds. No music played, no one spoke, just names, hundreds, each one a story, each one a silence that Jasmine Crockett refused to let stay buried. She wasn't just holding a folder anymore. She was holding their memory. The moment settled into stillness until Crockett reached into her jacket once more. She unfolded a yellowed paper, its edges curled like it had been held too many times. "I received this 2 years ago," she said softly, "from a retired Border Patrol agent. He sent no name, just this letter." She began to read. "I followed orders. I zipped the body bags. I signed off on the missing pages. But one night, I saw a 5-year-old girl asking a guard if she could pray. She thought prayer might bring her dad back. We had deported him that morning." The letter continued. "You don't know me, but if you ever have a voice big enough to tell their truth, I hope you use it." Crockett's voice quivered. He ended the letter with 5 words. She looked toward Melania, toward the world. "Forgive me for the silence." The stage was silent again, but it trembled now with meaning, with memory, with the ache of truth finally spoken. And for the first time, Melania's shoulders slumped. She wasn't in control of the story anymore, because the story was never hers to hold. The folder came back out, but now Crockett held it with trembling fingers. She flipped to a page and pointed to a line blacked out by thick government ink. "This is from Melania Trump's original visa adjustment file," she said. "The section that was redacted for security reasons." She looked directly into the camera now. It wasn't about national security. It was about narrative security, about image control. A hush swept across the audience, the kind of hush that happens when people realize they've been fooled. Crockett pressed a button. A scanned version of the same page appeared on the big screen, unredacted. The audience leaned forward. It showed correspondence between immigration lawyers and high-level officials. A fast-tracking process activated by a personal political favor. Jaws dropped. "This isn't Melania's fault," Crockett said, her voice soft, "but it's the truth. And when the truth is denied to the many for the comfort of the few, we become something less than a nation." She paused, scanning the crowd. "We become a machine." Melania looked down, her hands shaking. And for the first time, the truth wasn't just on paper. It was alive. It was standing. It had a name. Jasmine Crockett. From the balcony gallery above the forum, a woman stood up. She was older, gray hair pulled tightly into a bun, hands pressed together like she was holding back something ancient. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "May I speak?" Security stepped forward, but the moderator raised his hand. "Let her." The woman stepped to the railing. "My name is Marta Gonzalez. I was brought here in 1992. I cleaned rooms in a hotel where officials stayed. I never stole, never lied." Her voice cracked. "I watched friends be deported for less than what Melania was handed on a silver plate. I watched children go silent." She pointed to the screen still glowing with names. "My sister died in one of those centers. She had asthma. They took her inhaler away." A cry burst from someone in the crowd. "I buried her in silence. Tonight, I break that silence." She looked at Jasmine. "Thank you for seeing us." Crockett nodded, eyes shining. This wasn't a political forum anymore. It had become a reckoning, an unearthing of pain long buried beneath polished speeches and redacted truths. And the gallery began to clap, not loud, but steady, clapping for truth, clapping for Marta, clapping for Jasmine. The silence afterward was sharp. Then, finally, Melania Trump reached for her mic. Her hands were visibly shaking. I came here hard to defend my husband, she began. To protect my name. She looked down. But I was wrong. A wave of murmurs swept the room. She inhaled deeply. When I came to America, I was afraid. I followed advice. I let people do things for me, things I didn't ask questions about. And when I became First Lady, I was told to say little, to smile, to stay polished. She paused, her voice almost inaudible. Maybe, in silence, I became part of the lie. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. I didn't know about the redactions, about the families, but I know now. Crockett listened, not coldly, not triumphantly, but with a quiet strength that had anchored the entire night. You don't owe me an apology, Jasmine said gently. You owe them one. She pointed to the screen, to the gallery, to every name, every mother, every child, every voice drowned in paperwork and politics. And for the first time, Melania Trump nodded, not as a First Lady, but as a woman who finally saw her own reflection. As the forum neared its final segment, the moderator announced a surprise. We invited someone tonight who declined to come, someone whose absence says everything. A spotlight turned to the far left chair, empty. The placard read, Donald J. Trump. Gasps and whispers filled the air. Crockett looked at the chair, her voice calm. That's not just a seat, that's a silence. And silence has cost this country more than we will ever calculate. She turned to the audience. Do you know what it feels like to testify while the person responsible won't even show up? Heads nodded. Tears rolled freely now. Jasmine opened the folder one last time. She pulled out a small photograph. This, she said, her voice breaking, is the only known image of a 9-year-old girl named Anahi Estrada. She died in a cold holding cell, alone, holding her little brother's shoe. She held up the photo. The screen mirrored it. Some in the crowd cried out. A few stood in quiet sorrow. Crockett stepped forward, placing the photo on the empty chair. Tonight, she said, the truth finally had a seat at this table. And as the cameras zoomed in on the photo, America saw her, maybe for the very first time. A soft video clip began to play on the giant screen behind the panel. No warning, no introduction. It showed a dark, grainy detention cell, just concrete walls, dim fluorescent light. Silence, then a whisper. Mommy. Yevgeny? Mommy, is she coming? A small voice, a boy, maybe 5 years old. He was lying on the floor, curled around a thin silver blanket, alone. The timestamp read, 2:47 a.m., July 2019. Gasps filled the room. The sound of sniffles turned into open sobbing. Jasmine Crockett turned from the screen. I fought for 2 years to get this footage released, she said, her voice heavy. The department told me it didn't exist. They lied. She pointed at the image frozen behind her. He waited for her all night. She paused. His mother was deported that morning. No one told him. He cried himself to sleep, woke up, and cried again. Crockett looked at Melania. You said truth matters, so tell me, does this not count as truth? Melania covered her mouth. Some in the audience stood, faces streaked with tears, because now the pain had a sound, a face, a name lost to silence, until Jasmine gave it back. After the forum ended, Jasmine Crockett stepped outside, alone. Snow flurries fell over D.C. The night air stung her cheeks. She was heading toward her car when she heard footsteps. A woman approached. She was wrapped in a blanket, her face weathered from time. I'm sorry, the woman said. I watched you tonight. Jasmine stopped. Are you okay? The woman hesitated, then slowly pulled out a photo, cracked and faded. My daughter, she whispered. She died waiting for a court date. They never gave her one. I kept this, because I didn't know what else to do. Her hands trembled as she handed Jasmine the photo. I sleep in the park across from the Capitol. Sometimes I stare at the dome and wonder if anyone in there still cares. Jasmine held the photo like it was sacred. "I care," she said, voice trembling, "and I won't stop." The woman cried silently, shoulders shaking. Jasmine did something unexpected. She pulled off her scarf and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. "I'll remember her name," she whispered. "I promise." That night, Jasmine didn't just carry truth. She carried grief, and the people felt it because she didn't walk away. The next morning, every major news outlet ran the story, but they didn't call it a political confrontation. They called it a confession. Headlines read, "Crockett exposes forgotten voices." The night truth shook power. First Lady silenced by immigration files. People across America started posting their own family stories. Hashtags like "My Mother Too," "Name Her," and "Truth Unlocked" flooded social media. But one clip went viral. Not of the folder, not even the little boy's voice. It was the moment Jasmine Crockett wrapped her scarf around the homeless mother in the parking lot. A single caption read, "She didn't just talk, she touched." That morning, Congress received over 1.8 million emails demanding immigration reform. Dozens of lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans, called Jasmine personally. But she didn't answer right away. She was at a small cemetery outside Arlington, laying a single white rose at the grave of a 14-year-old girl whose name had been redacted from history. Until now. As she stood in silence, the wind brushed her face. And somewhere in that wind, it felt like all the names she had spoken were finally whispering back, "Thank you." 3 days later, Jasmine Crockett walked into a hearing room on Capitol Hill. It was quieter than usual. No flashing cameras, no chatter. Just one brown envelope sitting in her seat. She paused, picked it up. No return address. No note. Inside, a single photograph. It was of the boy in the detention video. On the back, scribbled in blue ink, "His name is Mateo. He's safe now. A family in Phoenix adopted him." No signature, just a second note underneath. "Because you refused to look away." Jasmine sat down slowly. Her hands trembled. For months she had fought against walls of silence, paper, and power. But this was proof that truth had moved someone, somewhere. Tears filled her eyes. Not from pain this time, but from something deeper. Hope. Hope that one voice used with courage could pull another soul out of darkness. She stood, faced the room, and held the photograph high. "This is not victory," she said. "This is responsibility." The few in the gallery clapped softly, because in that moment, they saw what America could be. If truth stopped being edited. That evening, Jasmine went live on national television for a solo interview. The host greeted her with reverence. The questions were soft, but Jasmine didn't come to soften. "I want to read one last redaction," she said, one they didn't count on. She held up a new document. It's a transcript from a private meeting in 2017. High-level officials discussed delaying immigration court hearings until media coverage cooled down. She read aloud, "If the girl dies before the story breaks, the outrage dies with her." The studio went dead silent. The host was frozen. Viewers at home, millions of them, felt their breath catch. Jasmine folded the paper. Her name was Juliana. She was 8. She didn't survive. She looked straight into the camera. "You want to know why I fight? That's why." No dramatics, no yelling, just truth. Raw, full, and delivered with grace. And across the country, something shifted. Churches held candlelight vigils. Schools read her speech aloud. Children wrote letters. Thank you for seeing us. Even those who once doubted her now wept quietly in front of their screens, because the final redaction wasn't from the government, it was from our own hearts. And Jasmine tore it open with love. 1 week later, the White House issued a rare statement. They acknowledged discrepancies in Melania Trump's immigration history, but it was what came after that made headlines. We owe Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and the American people an apology. The truth matters, and so do those who speak it. Melania never returned to public forums, but she did something else. She sent Jasmine a handwritten note. It read, "You did what I could not. You stood, and you stayed. I will live with that." Jasmine folded the letter, placed it in the same folder that started everything, and donated it to the National Archives. A week later, a new seat was added to the permanent exhibit at the Museum of American History. Not for a president, not for a first lady, but for one chair, once empty, that came to represent a voice that finally got heard. On it sat a single object, the folder. Beneath it, a plaque, in honor of truth and those who never looked away. Epilogue, a message to you. Your direct emotional call to action. If you felt something tonight, if your heart cracked open, if your eyes burned, if you whispered, "That's not okay," then don't let it end here. Leave a comment. Share your story. Someone needs to hear it. Click like. Not for me, but for Juliana, for Mateo, for every name that never made it on the list. Subscribe, because we are not done telling the truth, not even close. We cry, we remember, and together we rise.